just want to say welcome to anybody who's watching. I'm Ray Roche, one half of Two Pugs Publishing, and my cohort here is
Jim Lavery. I'm a collaborator at large with Ray Roche and the Roches at Two Pugs Publishing.
excellent. Now, what we want to do tonight was just to have a chat about how we do what we do, why we do, and while we're doing that, Jim is going to show us how he sketches, and just be an informal sort of a chat about the creative process and slight production as well, and how much we all enjoy hard work. Is that okay?
It sounds great. Sounds great.
Cool.
So let's just maybe start with a background of Two Pugs, shall we? Or
yeah, about 5 years ago, my wife decided I needed a hobby and get out and make friends. And my daughter actually introduced me to live pubcast, and we had a great time. And I went to the second one, the third one, and then I met a couple of lads who were making comics, and they introduced me to indie comics. I didn't know that people could make comics on a small scale. And talked it over with the wife, and we thought, okay, let's put some time into this and see how it goes. And it was to be like a creative outlet for me and to meet a few people and just generally get out of myself and my own head kind of thing. And it's just gone kind of from strength to strength. We did one comic and that led on to the second, and then we have a series, and now we're doing graphic novels. That's our background. My wife would take a less active role in it. She would do the money side, transport side, organization. And last year we brought on my daughter, Haley, as an editor. Because we needed someone with a background in production and an eye for detail. It's so important because little things can slip by in all walks of life. But that's Two Pugs Publishing. How about you, Jim? Where did you come from? You were hatched from an egg.
Where did I come from? Crikey. Yeah, I've been a graphic designer. I went to art college in the 90s. So I graduated in 96, and I was working as a graphic designer here and there, and an illustrator. And I only did little pieces of illustration, and I was always pushing it. Like if I got a graphic design job, I was just seeing if there was an angle of doing illustration. Can we get more and more illustration in there? So I've been working as a graphic designer for about 20 years or so. Yeah, more than that, 22 years. And it's only in the past, there was a thing our kids came along, and because I've been self-employed for all those years, the kids came along, then I was able to shoulder more of the childcare and hop in, like leapfrog, do some work here, look after the kids there, and sort of leapfrog. And then you kind of fall out of the way of graphic design because I'm only sort of half in, half out. And I thought, crikey, I better make a go of it. PJ Holden, you and I've known him since I was a kid. We lived really closely together and all of this. And he was always on me at art. I mean, you're going to art college, for God's sake. You should do some comics. Do some comic. What do you do? He was always encouraging me, and I always resisted. And the reason I resisted is because it's so hard to make any money. And I just thought, well, this is crazy. Why would I? And I could see how much he put in. Like you're sitting on your own 8 or 10 hours a day. You're working away, and trying to get an editor to see you, to give you a job, and then it just seemed crackers to me. I just needed to earn some money. But anyway, whenever the kids came along, I kind of had a wee bit more time where, I wasn't, I thought if there's ever going to be a chance for me to do this, because I've always loved comics, this is the time. This is the time where I'm going to have to do it. And that's it. I just started putting feelers out through the internet, and Twitter came along, and Facebook, and I did a couple of books, illustrations for books and that kind of thing. And truthfully, I never thought I was good enough for comics. Art college put that out of your head, the idea of comics, it's like a trash medium, they just didn't do it. Nobody talked about it at all. And but I'd always loved comics and cartoons and always loved it. I just never believed I could make a living at it. Just never ever believed. And that's what I wanted to ask you, Ray. Whenever you decided, like, you could have taken up any hobby at all. To me, the comics in my brain still mean the Beano and the Dandy, you know, all those kind of books. What did comics mean to you? That you could have gone in anything, you could have done anything at all.
Well, I'm not a real people person, you know, but I've had lots of jobs where I meet the public, and sometimes in the best way, and sometimes at the worst times. And I found that comics, it gives you the chance to organize the entire world to your point of view, and you're in charge of everything. And you take an idea and you flesh it out and you add characters, and then suddenly you have a world and it starts to write itself. And then when the script is finished and it's perfect, it can't be added to or taken away from, it's just absolutely perfect. You give it to someone to make it real. And then it comes back and it's different. It's not just words on a page that 20 people can imagine and get the wrong idea. Now it's coalesced into pictures, and pictures does say 1,000 words. So comics was my way of being creative, writing stories, plotting out the world, and then seeing it in picture format. I'd stopped reading comics back in 1976, and all you could get here was Superman, Batman, you know, very limited. And it wasn't until my late 30s I was working for a graphic designer, and he was semi-retired, so he would give me the checks to give out, and he'd say to me, "Ray, don't pay anybody on Thursday because they won't come in on Friday." So I said, "Okay, if just because you got paid, you come in." I thought, but no. So the lad who made the sandwiches kept pestering me, saying, "Can I have my check? I won't tell anybody." So he was going to Forbidden Planet, and he had this thing called a pull list. I didn't know what a pull list was. He had all these comics he was collecting, and he'd go down once a month and take them all out from the shop. And this day he came back, and I said, "What's the deal with the big bag of comics?" And he goes, "Oh, you don't understand. Comics are this, that, and the rest." And the first comic he took out, I looked at it and I said, "What's the Wolverine?" And he goes, "Oh, no, what's Wolverine?" And I was supposed to know who Wolverine was. I ain't got a clue who he was. I sat down and I read it, and it was excellent. It wasn't a comics far as I was remember comics, you know. I've read books all my life, and books don't really change all that much. They don't evolve really. But these were works of art, you know, and they had emotion and they had pathos and page turning, which is very important. And I thought, this is wonderful. And then I started collecting Wolverine, X-Men, things I hadn't done for 20 odd years. And I filled the house up with stuff. And if you're into comics and you have kids and a wife who likes to buy you presents, you end up with figurines and posters and comics and annuals. And it's just amazing, the world that's out there, you know. So comics for me was, I didn't want to spend, well, I would rather spend 5 years writing a book on my own in the dark, like a monk somewhere. But at the end of the day, that's self-destructive, you know. With comics, you actually meet people at a table when you're selling your comics. You meet people in, you know, a comic book shop. You talk to people online. It's such a huge connective thing, you know. And when I grew up, comics, as you say, it was the Bunty or the Beano or the Dandy or Victor or some war comic, you know. You devoured 100 of these during some holidays, you know. But now comics, you know, they're not all superhero things, you know. I've read some absolutely excellent comics that were about how people are struggling to survive and to cope with how the world is now. You know, when comics started off 100 years ago, the world was different, you know, very different. So as you were in art school, comics hadn't achieved that gravitas. But now they have. a comic can be a game changer. You know, Marvel and DC. You know, making billions at the box office.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that? No one would put money into. Stan Lee said it. No one would put money into a Fantastic Four movie, and then they did, and it was terrible. The very, very first one, and it was a low budget sort of made for television thing. It was absolutely awful, but it's worth looking at if you can find it somewhere. When they finally decided to do it properly, put the money in, get the writers in, get the thing moving for today. Did a pretty good job with the Fantastic Four movie there about 15 years ago. And that's the way it is. I mean, because there's no budget in comics for like special effects. If you're drawing something, you're drawing something. You can say, I want that spaceship to hit the earth and everything explodes. You draw that. If you're going to do that with CGI, you know, you need 500 people in the Philippines, 300 in France, you know, all doing their own particular rendering, top of their field. And that costs $200 million. But it makes $1 billion, hopefully. You know, so comics have achieved something these days. You know, they're an art form. They've always been an art form in certain countries in the world. In France, in Japan, comics are considered like there's a word for it, like the ninth art or something. It's called something like that. The art form, people respect it. You know, no one looks down at you if you have a Western comic on your table. You know.
I'll just do a sketch here as we're sketching. A year ago, in France and Belgium, I'm sure you had the books Asterix and Tintin, and Hergé and Uderzo, or they're like national heroes in France. They take it super seriously. Italy has a huge comic scene. Germany, France. And these guys, and years ago I did, I'll just sketch her out here. I still want to get something going with her. A little character called Fionnuala, and a kind of Fionnuala McCool. I thought, because I got girls, I wanted a kind of female adventure character that I could do in the vein of Asterix, but Irish, obviously, being from Ireland. And I just thought, well, these guys are heroes in their own country. Why can't we have our own, you know, little character and everything? And the obvious one would be Finn McCool. But, you know, we know Finn McCool from We're No Age. And then having girls, daughters, myself, and wanting to do, you know, something for them, Fionnuala instead of Finn. And I just thought that would be amazing. Why can't we have, it just always strikes me, why can't we have in Ireland or whatever you want to say, Britain, or I guess, our own? Why can't we treat them in the same way as they do in France and Germany, where they really respect their artists, you know? So you ended up, Two Pugs, we've done together. We're going to talk over the next couple of podcasts, I guess, about all of the range of Two Pugs comics, but I suppose tonight was SSDD your first comic?
No, the first was a science fiction story. I had written a lot of short stories and little novellas back in the 70s about these characters. The guy was an Indiana Jones type, you know, and long story short, he's pretty much was like the Predator, but it predated the Predator story. Right. Special ops team land in the jungle somewhere, crash land. They're being chased by these Indians, natives. They end up in a pyramid, and they get picked up one at a time by this living statue, which was Soma. And I'd written these stories yonks ago and put them away. No one ever saw them, you know. And when it came time to actually sit down and write a comic script, we decided to go into it seriously. I wrote Witch, I wrote Soma, and wrote Talking Gun. And my editor at the time suggested we go with Soma because it seemed to be the most realized script. The one, because I write everything as a short story first, then I turn it into a comic script. And Soma was the one that was furthest advanced. as far as he was concerned. So we went with Soma. It was a science fiction story. And it was a learning curve, you know. Nowadays, I'd advise anyone who wants to make a comic to just go on YouTube and just type in, how do I make comics? There's lots of people out there who give you the basics. They won't tell you everything you need to know, but to give you the basics, sometimes in a very friendly, informative way. That wasn't the case back in 2017, you know. It was sort of word of mouth, you know, how do I do this? How do I print this? Who does that? And the first comic, it hit a lot of snags, and it sort of died halfway through production. And I was feeling very depressed. I was going to pack the whole thing in, and I actually was. That Monday night, or Tuesday, I was doing a course with PJ Holden in Dublin, and I saw how to make comics from the artist's point of view, and that was a big eye opener. You know, I just assumed it was an ATM machine. You put the card in, something comes out. You know, I didn't realize how much the artist has to actually figure out and how long it takes. And I was feeling very depressed, and things weren't going right. I was going to pack it all in, and my wife said, look, I paid for this course, just go. So I went, I met PJ. He was very nice, very friendly. And I thought, okay, I'll stick with this. And then over a few weeks, the artist on Soma, Michael, he said, sorry it didn't work out, Ray, but do you mind if I put some of these pictures up online to show people what I've been doing? I said, yeah, go ahead. Why not? And people came back to me and said, are you actually going to do this? This looks good. And I went, okay. So I asked people to come back on board and we'll finish it off. And we finished it off. It took a while. But feeling so down and depressed in work one day, one lunchtime, my boss, I get on really well with my boss, and you know, she's great, you know, but she's on maternity leave, and that just made matters worse. We had a replacement for her who's a nice guy, but he just wasn't the same, you know. And I was just typing away one lunchtime, and I started typing this sort of like a telephone story where you only do dialogue and you speak everything, all the emphasis on words and inflection. So I had this person rings the police and gets the wrong person in the station. The very last person who shouts the phone picks up the phone. It's a drug sergeant, and he's almost deliberately getting the wrong end of the stick. Everything that this poor member of the public tries to say to report this crime, he goes the opposite way, or he picks something up wrong. And I was pages and pages into this thing, and people started sitting down behind me saying, I know who that is. I know who that is. And they said, oh, you should write this. It's just a great story. I said, it's only dialogue. That's all it is. So I went away and thought about it. And the first draft of SSDD, Den Bones, it was centered on the drug sergeant, but I had two characters at the side, like a Greek chorus who were explaining the world. And they were Bo and Sam. And on the second
Bo and Sam.
Yeah, that's them. They're beauties. They just look so excellent there, you know. It's just amazing. When you write something and see someone put it in picture form, you go, you know, I'm in the back seat here, you know. That's what it feels like, you know. But yeah, they became the mainstay as I started doing draft after draft. And I had this story set in an alternate Dublin where magic was real, and there was a serial killer, and the police were involved in cover-ups and things. And it was called something different for a long time. And my wife, she tends to come up with great titles. And the serial killer was Dragon Bone Man. So she said, call it Them Bones. You know, and I went, yeah, it just clicked. And so we went with that. We found an artist, and again, it takes a long time. You know, for a year, you get excited about it, but it does take a long time. You know, and the artist we had, Fiona, she's from Cork, Kinsale, I think it is, originally from England. She puts a million things. She covers every inch of the page. She puts a million things on the page, and that just takes her a long time. You know, and sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
But in the comic, there's a dream sequence at the back. It's a flashback. And I said, look, draw it any way you want. And she did her own style, her favorite style that she has. And those pages, 4 pages, would jump out at you, because she had that freedom. But with comics, you have to stick to the plot. You have to have certain page turns. You have to have the beginning, the middle, and the end. And you have to give the reader clues at the start to what's coming up. Otherwise, they kind of go, after page 6, I'm done with this. Throw it away. But that's how SSDD came about. By the time we got it printed, my boss had come back over maternity leave. And I had to say to her, we based this on you. And she goes, you know what? And the main character in this is you. So she read it and she went, do you see me that way? And I said, well, no, you said it one day. You said here one day, wouldn't it be great if you could just say what you wanted, without worrying what people think, and just do what you want when you want it?
Yeah.
And that's what Sam does. She's the complete opposite to Bo Rogers. He's the sergeant, detective sergeant. Yeah. He's technically her boss, but she's completely opposite. But they're not antithetical at all. They complement each other. She really wants to be less impulsive, and he wants to be a bit more free. But of course, he has a secret, and he can't be free because he has to be controlled all the time. That's where I came from, SSDD. And the stories, they just write them. They literally write themselves. I come up with an idea, and suddenly it's bang, we're off to the races. It's really, really easy to write. I find it very.
There's a real sense whenever I'm reading the script. So, when I was reading you describe it really well. Those 2 characters. So, Bo and Sam. Just for everybody and anybody who's listening to, who gets to listen to this and they haven't read a book or one of the SSDD books here, if you're of my generation or anybody who remembers, they have this classic TV trope even or drama trope of Mulder and Scully, or think of like Starsky and Hutch, this brilliant back and forth. And you described them really, really well. There's one more free spirit who needs to be reined in, Sam, and Bo, who you can tell is contained and quiet and thoughtful, but wants to be bursting out. And it really, really comes across. And that's why it's why comics became my favorite medium, because it can do that. It takes time to read the page. You've got to slow down, read the page, realize what's going on, and the pictures, hopefully, and things are going on in the background, and so on and so on. And that's why I love it, because then you can fall in love with these characters, and you want to see what happens next, what's going to happen next. And I jumped in, I think, on issue 3, and so I'm reading the script. And I remember reading the script, okay, all right, okay, and this is going on, and this is going on, okay, right. And there's a few changes. And then we get to the end of the script, as you say, there's that last page turner or that cliffhanger for the next one. And I'm reading it and going, God damn, you want to go to the next. Yeah. Just go to the next. But I've got to draw it, and I go, no, I've got to pace myself. I've got to think, and things, and there's payoffs, and there's things you can see. Oh, is this where you go? And things you don't see. So that's the other thing about it, that it's a medium that makes you, it's not always immediate gratification. It's like delayed gratification. You've got to see, and then guess what happens? You fall in love with these characters. Who are they? Where do they go? What's happening? And what I loved about it as well, because you've introduced the element of magic into SSDD, that almost gives you a license to stretch things, to say, yeah, people can disappear through a portal into somewhere else, or physics doesn't exactly behave the way you think, but that just gives you license to have an adventure, to expand your imagination, to say, I can breathe here, I could just spread my wings, which is really, I think we touched upon another conversation we had. It's something really arresting, no pun intended, about you, where you're a very contained person, but this imagination is, I remember reading all these books and going, bloody hell, this guy, because through your emails and everything, a message and everything, it's just a bloke, an ordinary bloke, and we're having a bit of back and forth. And then you read scripts, and all this stuff comes out, which again is another thing about comics. I did a thing last week in Queen's University here, and we did a comic based around it was around plastic and issues of plastic waste and this. So we produced a comic about it. And then we did a presentation, and there was a bit of a Q&A afterward. And somebody put their hand up and they said, you don't think this is all very juvenile, comics? And I felt so depressed for the people reading it, that they wouldn't entertain it, that there was a cutoff point. This is a childish thing, and we're going to do that. And I thought, oh, you don't know. You just don't know. You've no idea. You have no idea that you've cut down the world for yourself. You've imposed this restriction on yourself, whereas you are spreading your wings. Like, this is, I don't know how many books we're in now, and we've gone detective, clowns. I don't even want. Let's leave clowns. Clowns needs its own. City of Clowns is another book. I'll just put it up for anybody who's watching. City of Clowns is another book. I'll just introduce it that this is one of the books. It's your favorite cover.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. But it needs its own special. We'll leave that, Jill. We'll just park that for tonight. Just because that needs a whole other thing. We've got Western and vampires, and I think I said to you the only thing we haven't done really is giant robots and space and everything. Which actually you just said there. Now your first one was a space sort of science fiction thing. So. Right, so I guess we should talk tonight. We're going to concentrate on SSDD, and Ray. Do you want to explain a little bit, because this is informed very, very much by your job, or some of the work that you've done over the past few years? Do you want to talk about that for a while?
Yeah, I'm a guard of staff, civilian. For many, many years, I was forensic liaison officer, dealing with exhibits from murders and serious crime and things like that. Then I moved to the drugs unit. I was there for a while, and then I moved to child protection, which I've been there for the last 5 years. Everything I've seen and learned, I've put into SSDD. Everything that's there is a real thing, but I've turned it upside down. There is a forensic science hour Ireland in the Phoenix Park, in the Bureau building where I worked for many years. They used science. I made it magic, so I had to have monks, I've worked in drugs units, and I worked at Compal, so I took all of that and again turned it around, So my background, I've been in this job 17, almost 18 years. You see a lot and you deal a lot, and more is being civilianized. And the people who are out on the street, in those blue uniforms, we tend to tear them down when we can, but really when we're in trouble, who do we call? We call the police. And in my perfect world, I would call Bo and Sam. But what I did was I took a traditional story, a serial killer story, and I took everything I knew and lots of people I know, and I wallpapered this story with all my experiences. So there's actually jokes in that only a police officer would get. And there's jokes in there that members of the public would go, oh yeah, I see what you're doing there.
That was the first issue I drew. Second issue I drew, this one, we've got punching Nazi. So it's a real trip, Ray, it really is. And I think where do we have? Yeah, so let's see what we have here. We have, this is the room, and I just imagine your office. I was reading the script, I was thinking, bloody Nora, what is going on? And I could just see it in my brain. I thought, these are the characters that he works with, and it's all very clear. Yes. It's all really clear, and it comes through. And I know you have a slant on it, about magic and all of that, and that's what we get into. But that camaraderie in the office, you know, I think that the craziness that we just maybe suggests the craziness of the job. You know, nobody's walking around with a skull or anything like that, not in real life. But you know, it's just a way to highlight the craziness of the job. You know,
if anyone doubts anything in the books, everything, and I mean everything, has a tiny grain of truth in it.
It's all come from somewhere.
Yeah,
which always leads back to what your point about writing what you know.
Pretty much, yeah. My boss says, you know, she said one day, she said, you look at me and how do you think these things? And I said, it's like looking at things through a different lens, you know. And you focus on certain things, and she gives me incredible inspiration, I suppose you'd say, you know, because I only have to just turn on that switch in my head and say, what would she do in this situation, you know? And then it's magnified, you know. And but
you give me, you know what, it gave me a real inspiration, because it's like I started reading this character, especially Sam, and think, okay, you know what happens, don't you, in the movies? You've got a female character, main character, and she's kicking people in the face and karate chopping them and running around with machine guns and, you know, fist fights and all of this. And Sam definitely has that to her character. She's, you know, definitely, but that's not it. It's not it. She's, you know, there's a real, people substitute the karate for character. That's not karate. It's not a character. That's not, you know, I'm interested. And she talks about things. She has a view. She has a dark sense of humor. She's tough as nails and everything. And this character comes through. So often when you're doing a female character, you know, she's got swords or machine guns and huge boobs and all of that stuff. And this gave me a chance to draw a female character who's ready for fisticuffs if she needs to be. She's tough as nails, but she's got a suit on, you know. She's got a business suit. She's not, you know, lycra and all of that kind of stuff. She's got a real grounding in reality. So I'm just sketching her as we speak. That was my first. So, and you can't help but fall in love with a character like that, because it's because of that feeling of reality. That guy, Ray, knows who this person. Ray knows her. This is somebody he knows, you know. And that's what I felt about her. I felt that she was a real person, you know.
It's very important that this character lives in the moment.
Yeah.
She's focused, ultra focused when you get her attention. But once something else is happening in the room, she's oh, look at the pretty colors. Look at the fly. Oh,
yeah.
No. Yeah. And it always goes to mischief. You know, that didn't come through a lot in the beginning of the first book. But by the end of it, coming out more and more, because I think the artist started to trust me. I started to draw what I was saying, you know, rather than interpret it too much. But what I find now, she's taken on a life, you know. She marches into a place, and she had a catchphrase, and the family said, no, you can't use that. And my eldest, no, you can't use that at all. And it's called, it's from the old days when you had tough as nails broads in these movies and things, you know. And her favorite writer is Dexter Lang, and he had a phrase in one of his books, trill me or drill me. In other words, impress me or shoot me. That's what it means. But I didn't understand. There might be another connotation out there in some fashion. And it was, no, she can't say that. So yeah, but that's coming more out in her. And I've noticed that in this story now, especially. She's more impress me. She shows up at everything, impress me. If I'm not impressed, I'm bored. And that was the, I remember reading that. I think it was in the first issue or second issue or something, and she says that, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, that's a real ballsy statement, isn't it? Yeah. Bo, he's based 100% on Commander Captain Cisco from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
I saw an episode of him where they were all back in time, and all the characters were working for a pulp science fiction magazine in the 1930s. And I think the actor helped co-write the episode, and he directed it. And just the man, when you see people and you're just so impressed by their honesty, and you trust that person, you believe he's a captain, he seems huge issues with the Bajorans and everybody else. And I just had him in my head. And if you have a real clear image of how someone looks, you understand how they fit into the panel, how they fit into the story. And originally he was supposed to have little circular rimless glasses, but they got lost somewhere in the shuffle. And because no one knew they were there, no one missed them. It was grand.
Yeah.
But he's I hate to say it, but there are characters that you just see sometimes and you go, yeah, I trust that person. And I embodied him with everything that I like about people, And he's got so much compassion. He's got so much patience. I mean, it's like herding cats with Sam in the room, She's always into something, up to something, wants to hit somebody or do something. And he's thinking like everyone else playing checkers, and he's playing chess. He's thinking all the moves, and he knows immediately that, no, it's not Nazis. Everyone else is going, maybe it is. He goes, no, something else happening here. So he's got this intuition, make the right moves. That's where he came from. He was, I suppose, everything I wanted to be, but I'm not.
Yeah,
it's amazing to see.
He's a great character as well. I'm really, really sensitive. You've got to be super careful that when you're drawing different ethnicities, that you don't go over into cartoonish or offensive kind of thing. You've got to be careful. I'm always really careful about it as well. You just get the right balance. And so when I was reading the character, and that's immediately who I thought of as Ben Sisko from Deep Space Nine. And I thought, and his character, again, this is the thing with the, character comes through, and he's just a bloke, but he's got this integrity about him and this kind of serious mind, and
exactly,
and it really comes through, So you don't need to. Again, there's a lot of. I remember in the 90s, the Image comics with. Again, they substituted machine guns for character. They've got the muscles and they've got the shoulder pads and the machine guns and everything, as if that equals a character. And that's, it does nothing for me. Leaves me a wee bit cold. That kind of stuff. It's good fun, don't get me wrong. It's good fun to draw and all of that. But with these two characters, you've just got a uniform. I think Bo's got a shirt and tie, and that's it. Sam, the same kind of. So there's nothing you wouldn't look. You'd look at kind of detective, I guess, but there's nothing really to signal character in that way. Big shoulder pads or whatever, lycra suits and all of that stuff, capes. There's none of that comes through. They just look kind of ordinary, real world people. But then this, these guys, again, come back to that, write what you know, and what you know is real stories. There's some crazy stuff going on. It's just craziness, and it really, really comes through. Sequence is hilarious. Sam gets into fisticuffs and she's just kicking ass. Like there's just a sequence of, you have these almost punctuations, they're going along. They're bringing you along, and it kind of detects this about what's that about, and then there's just this explosion of violence, or and you go, wow, and that takes you along another couple of pages, and then you're back into it. So yeah, she's kicking serious ass here. And then I remember getting to the end of this. I won't spoil it for anybody who's hopefully going to go and get an issue and buy it and read it for themselves. But you left in such a cliffhanger, and I thought, God damn it. Can I say it? Can I say what you did?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going along. I won't tell you the why or how, right? Ray only goes and lets me draw this insane gorilla character. So at the very end of the book, when I've just, we've done all in the fight scenes and everything, he teases me with this gorilla character. It comes in and, I don't want to spoil too much of it, but there's this huge gorilla bursts on the scene. And I'm ready to go. I want to draw, who is this character? I want to draw this character. And it's the last goddamn panel on thing. So don't tell me about what's going to happen, how this character comes in, because I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, you're a wicked tease is all I can say. You're just a really wicked tease.
That's it.
How dare you?
I find some books you pick up and on the second page, you know where it's going.
Yeah.
There's no surprises to it at all. And there are people who can sit down and it can go page 1, panel 1, Superman flies over the city. Page 1, panel 2, Superman lands on Daily Planet. I can't do that. I have to write a whole outline and start at the end and say, what do I need to write now to get everyone ready for this big thing at the end? Because I hate books that finish off with this Deus Ex Machina thing where the spaceship lands and solves all problems. I can't do that. So everything that I put in the front end of the book pays dividends later on. Sam gets a catapult. Why does she need a catapult? That she gets from an unlikely source that comes in later on. There's a ritual. That ritual was there specifically to shock people and say, well, magic comes with a cost, and the ritual has to be grisly and gruesome because something else is going to happen. And rather than be a surprise for people that, oh, I don't want to see that, they're ready for it when it comes.
Yeah.
So there's a whole technical thing to the storytelling that a lot of people would miss out because everyone sat at their copybook doing their homework from school, composition, my holidays in Port Round, right? Blah, 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 blah. I went this, I did this. And they start from the time they leave the house. What happened next? Oh, did this happen? Then that happened, that happened. Whereas if they stopped and said, well, there was a monster in the tent, dun, 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 and then go back and tell you what happened beforehand. That's what I do there. And I drop things very, very deliberately. And as you said before, there's talky bit, and then there's action, and then there's talky bit, and then there's intrigue, and then there's talky bit. The talky bits are very important because you have to explain things to reader because they haven't been living with these characters for years like me. I have, So you have to explain a certain amount, but you have to do it in a certain way that pleases people. If you're not watching television these days, those binge ideas. The way they binge, they write stories now that don't have ad breaks, and they write them so that they expect you to binge the next episode and the next episode. So storytelling on television has changed quite a bit with Netflix and Amazon Prime and things like that because the pacing is different. People will sit for 3 or 4 hours on a Saturday and watch 6 episodes of the program. And when it comes to comics, for me, I play some plot to give people time to stop and think and then move on and then be ready for the thing when it happens. So it's all very deliberate. But I write the end, I write the last page, in my head on a very first draft. And then I work back, say, what do I need? It's a haunted house. I need a house to appear somewhere. It has to look a certain way. I need a murder weapon.
I can't remember who the quote is from. I think it might be John Cleese. I think he said one time, "Is the smoke funny?" They were making a movie and they were trying to get the shot right. They got the lights, they got camera, all of this, and they were trying to get the smoke to billow a certain way past them. And this went on for hours and hours. Not enough smoke, too much smoke. it's not blowing the right direction. The wind changed, so on, so on, so on. And he said, "Is the smoke funny?" And in other words, it was set up for a gag. The gag was, I don't know, something that they're saying, they're speaking the gag, they're speaking the joke, and whether or not there was too much smoke or not, didn't help the gag anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's what comes through. Your scripts are really lean, and I don't make stuff up. For some reason, I don't know what it is. It's just there on the page, and it pops into my brain, and
You seem to
I
get
see things.
You seem to get into the
There's
zone.
happy accident.
Yeah, you get into the zone, and like carrying the skull. The people don't know, but the skull is from a different series we're doing. Things like that. If I had thought to put that in, I would have felt so chuffed with myself because I was tying things together. And when I saw it, I went, this guy, and that's the way it is.
But, how would you describe it? SSDD? Because to me, it's detective, really. It's in that tradition of the spirit, those detective strips, those noir. There's definitely a black noir edge to it.
We call it a supernatural crime comedy, but that's just to give people something to think about. Really, it has its roots in those French detective stories where you had a very clever detective who would be a knockoff Sherlock Holmes, and if someone goes looking, there's a million books out there, prose books, different stories and different detectives. The French do it really well. You'd have the very clever Sherlock Holmes type character and his sidekick who did all the heavy lifting. And it was very much the opposite of Columbo, where the detective came in and said, "I am so clever and you're a fool, therefore I will arrest you and put you in prison." Where Columbo was, "I'm shabby raincoat, I take it you underestimate me, so I'll catch you unawares and you trip yourself up." So that sort of thing. All crime has its own little subgenre. This one here would be, like you said before, it's the X-Files meshed into Lethal Weapon, where there's a crime. It's a very simple. Usually, it's a very simple crime. Take it all, strip it all back in each of my books. The basic plot is very simple. It's a heist. It's whatever, but you make it complicated. You make it interesting. And it's the characters to do that, like you said. So all those old crime detective things where there was a good comeback back with rapport and repartee between the two people. And that's where it fits best. But because it's modern day, it can be a little bit more gruesome. It doesn't have to be as erudite and as antiseptic as Morse, where Inspector Morse was. And it's not technically procedural, it's not CSI. So if you take away all the things it's not, at its heart is, like you said, two professionals doing their job, but they do it in a world where magic exists. And they have that Lethal Weapon type thing where one may be crazy and one is long suffering, and there was someone came to the table one time and they bought SSDD when it was in floppies, and I don't know how it happened, but they bought the second one first. And they came back the following day and said, "I need to buy that one." I said, "You need to buy it." "Oh, because I started off the wrong one." They still enjoyed it, but because it's a procedural police thing, you have to see the beginning. Even though I start right in the end, you have to see it from the beginning. You have to follow it through that way. It's not something you can dip into, because the crime and the solving of the crime is just step by step by step. And if you take away everything, I hate to say this now, but a lot of police work, detective work, is so mundane, and it's so you don't get answers like from the lab in 3 minutes, like on television. You send something off, you request something, it takes 2 weeks, and then when you've got that, you have something else, and that takes 2 weeks, because when you go to court, everything has to be exactly right. There's no leeway. you know.
Yeah.
And detective work is very precise. You know, it's very rarely smoking gun. You know, the guy standing over a body. You know, very, very rarely that. But that's where I see that they fit in. They fit in that subgenre of wisecracking noir 1930s crime brought up to date with our sensibilities, where we are PC, we know we're talking about Nazis and we shouldn't talk about Nazis. We shouldn't see them in any favorable light, you know. But in this issue, we do. We see one in a favorable light because he's a man who's trapped. See, if I'm going to write something, it's not going to be just one dimensional. It's got to be, but what if, you know?
Yeah.
You know, kind of way. But yeah, I mean, you can describe it any way you like, but when you boil it all down, it has its birth, its roots in old noir black and white.
I think it's a real talent to make you sympathize with a character that you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
You're supposed to hate this guy, we don't like him, but then you sympathize. And what that reminded me of was Tony Soprano.
Yes, exactly.
Because you really like Tony Soprano, or at least I did. And then sometimes you catch yourself going, but this guy's a maniac. Yeah. He's a real maniac. But I like him. I really like him as a character. That's good. That's good writing. You know, that's really, that's hard to do. That must be hard, you know, to make it the reader go, no, this guy's disgusting. I don't want, you know, but actually you sympathize and you care with him, which is, as you say, two-dimensional, you know, or 3 or 4 dimensions even to his character. So yeah, that's a real. And then again, I can't do spoiler. I can't spoil it. You're going to have people are just going to have to read, go get their copy and read it for themselves. But there's stuff going on, and I'm going, I want to know that now. I want to know the answer to that question. Where did that guy go? There is one, without spoiling too much, there is one character who ends up in a tattoo parlor.
Yes.
And I go, well, what happened to that guy? No, I know I'll find out eventually. I know I'll find out. But just as a reader, as a fan, I'm thinking, no, I want that now. I want that payoff. No. So that's a really, even if I wasn't drawing this, I would definitely read it. Because it's right up my street. It's, you know, mystery. And again, I just think that the magic is just a vehicle to allow you to imagine, really.
Yeah. That's all it is. The magic is there to just explain something that I don't need to explain, you know.
Yeah.
Interdimensional portals.
Yeah.
I don't know how the Einstein-Rosenberg bridge works. It's a theory. I don't know how it works, how black holes work. I just say it's a portal, it's a rift. And people go, yeah, I saw it on Star Trek last week. That's grand. The nitty-gritty is that they're people, you know, they live in a world where magic happens, and it's an everyday thing. Especially in the first one, you see it's very humdrum. All the superheroes have left Ireland. They got better deals to go to America. Why spend 200 million making a man fly when you can actually get someone who can fly and pay 20 million? So they all left, and it's only the humdrum magic users who are left here in Ireland. But I guarantee you, the very last panel of this book, you know, and it's going to be like 100 and something pages. Well, the very last panel is going to pay off. Someone's going to go, oh crap, you know, because I let someone see the script and they went, oh crap, I didn't see that coming. And it's going to be 130 something pages if all the episodes, and to tell one story. And people are going to go, what? And I'll tell you, I'll tell nobody else, right?
Between you and me.
I started this story with 2 names, the names of 2 rival companies, right? And I wanted to make a pun out of it. And I slipped it into issue 2, I think it was. And I haven't really been at conventions yet. No one's really saw it yet. But when I know that someone's going to go, oh, for God's sake, you know, because it's such an obvious thing. I've been talking about these 2 families, like these 2 multi-conglomerates, and now they're going to actually sort of meet in a way.
Right.
So if you have a look at Nazis Inc., where the two police, Kat and Mags, are in the car talking to Liam, he's there for exposition, right? No, in Nazis Inc.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Oh, right, yes, when they're in the car, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they ask his opinion on, the bank heist and what to do and all that crack, where it's going.
Uh-huh. So, okay, so it's a Straub lab he's talking about, and then the Fields Corporation.
Yes.
So the two Straub. Surely it's not Strawberry Fields.
It is, yeah. He actually says in it, if it was up to me, I'd like to see Strawberry Fields forever. That was the whole reason I wrote that story. Put that joke in there.
Wow.
Then Bones, I did a Thelma and Louise joke. Wrote the whole story just to tell that joke.
Wow. Oh my God. How did I not see that?
But believe it or not, the editor on the first book, Then Bones, was Colin O'Mahony from Cork.
Uh-huh.
And big, tall, giant of a guy with a beard, lovely fella. And he was, he wasn't till he got the printed copies of the first SSDD. He went, "Oh, say a different day. That's what that means." Never realized. You're looking at it for a year.
No, I had no idea. I had no idea. Do you remember I asked you what's SS? I thought it was like a technical unit or something like that. And you put me in thinking. Yeah, I had no idea either. For people who want to get their hands on the latest issue of SSDD, I recommend it for everybody, and back issues and all of that stuff. Where do they go? What do they need to do?
Well, we have a website, twopugspublishing.org, and you can look at everything we do. We do a range. We do a best-selling children's series about a monkey.
Oh yes, yes.
Monkey who farts.
Monkey farts.
And that's very popular.
Yeah.
Everything is there. People can read up on everything, and they can send me an email through the contact box and say, "I'd like to copy this, and this," and we can post them out to them. We quote how much it'll be first. We give a discount as well. Our books are on sale in Dublin City Comics and Collectibles, and in Big Bang Comics. Can people contact you?
Contact me. The easiest way is through Twitter at Jim Lavery1. You can get me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook, Jim Lavery. You can email me at papercranecomics@gmail.com. So any of those, if you want to get in contact with me, any of those will do.
And thanks very much, Jim. I appreciate it. And any listeners or watchers, I appreciate you taking the time. We'll sign off now, and hopefully see you on the next one. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks very much, Ray. Yes, see you next week.
God bless.
Yeah.